The 13 Most Haunted Cities in the United States of America. Created, directed, and presented by Reverend Dr. Dikki Jo Mullen. In this video, Dr. Mullen will take us on an odyssey across the United States, pointing out the most haunted cities in America.
This is astrologer and parapsychologist Dr. Dikki Jo Mullen coming to you from downtown Orlando, Florida, with the 13 most haunted cities in the United States of America. Now there's some debate here and someone's personal experience can make a difference, but these are all haunted cities that I have personally visited and really felt there were friendly ghosts. Most spirits are friendly. They care about us. They don't quite want to leave us. So there's nothing sinister or negative about the many ghost tours available around the country. I have heard that San Antonio, Texas, around the Alamo is incredibly haunted, and the ashes of people who were hung there were spread in the parking lot and all sorts of things, but that isn't one of my picks, maybe because I haven't been there to personally investigate. But if we were going to add a number 14, I would say maybe San Antonio, Texas, around the Alamo. Ghosts have got my tongue here. It would do that. You should come back tonight and do the ghost tour. There are lots of ghosts around here anyway. Oh, how cool. That's a snippet of conversation that I heard at the St. Augustine Lighthouse when I was in line buying a ticket a while back, and it kind of reiterates how popular ghosts are. Maybe because we like to think we're not alone, maybe because it makes the everyday life more interesting and intriguing to think there's something more. But ghosts are a very, very popular topic, and they have been for hundreds and hundreds of years. Recently, though, ghost tours all around the world have really become a prominent part of any vacation trip. Number 13 on our list, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. This is a Victorian spa village in the Ozark Mountains, and it's home to the Crescent Hotel now, which claims to be the most haunted hotel in the country. The hotel was originally built in 1886 as a hospital by a very sinister character named Dr. Douglas Baker, and he had treatments for tuberculosis there, and people who were really on their last legs, last bit of hope, would take the train there, and so many would end up dying that at night they would have a chute going out of the hotel directly into a sort of cart to take them away. The former morgue in the hotel is where the ghost tour first starts, and where many an apparition has been sighted. There's also a child figure surrounded by a mist, just to name a few. The hot mineral springs have attracted those seeking healing and spiritual growth for centuries, though, and there's also a lot of Native American energy around Hot Springs, Arkansas. Number 12, Deadwood, South Dakota. This legendary Old West town takes its name from a gulch of dead trees which line the area, and there's a lot of Old West ghosts there. Wild Bill Hitchcock, Calamity Jane, and many on Hickok. I don't know, the ghosts surely have my tongue here. Let me try again. Wild Bill Hickok, Calamity Jane, and other characters linked to gunfights, saloons, gambling, dance hall activities, who lived and died in the Old West, remain to haunt Deadwood today. The Indian Wars figure prominently in the haunt history of the area. The cemetery there has a lot of earthbound spirits. Virginia Beach, Virginia is our number 11 pick. Along the shores of the Chesapeake Bay, Virginia Beach was settled by Captain John Smith in 1607, and it's been associated with various significant events. The golden age of piracy, centering around the exploits of Blackbird, the pirate, numerous shipwrecks, as well as battles generating reports of paranormal activity. Grace Sherwood, the Witch of Pungo, was tried and convicted of witchcraft in Virginia Beach on July 10th of 1706. The sky was a clear blue when Grace was tossed into the water, dunked with her thumbs tied to her toes, and immediately dark clouds gathered around and a fearsome storm began. The witch miraculously freed herself and swam away to shore. By the way, if a witch floats, that means she's innocent. And Grace was wrongly convicted. She was angrily cursing her captors, and she lived another half-century or so, and she never left. Ever since, her ghost has been associated with the coastal town of Virginia Beach. Number 10, Seattle, Washington. For thousands of years, Seattle was sacred, first to the Squamish and Duwamish indigenous tribes, and then later on to settlers because it's a port. The city is built on ancient burial grounds, marking the beginning of its long, rich, supernatural history. It does have a dark side. It was bloodied by the Grand Army of the Republic in the Civil War, and cries and shouts of soldiers, Native Americans, and fortune hunters have been recorded on tape. Apparitions are plentiful near the Pike Place Market and the West Seattle High School. A heartbroken student named Rose Higginbotham hung herself at the school in 1924, and the students there say she wanders the hallways still. Number 9 is Lewes, Delaware. Called the first city in the first state, Lewes is linked to the War of 1812 and a series of maritime tragedies. The Cannonball House is sort of the epicenter of the paranormal activities in Lewes, Delaware. It's now a museum. It was built in 1765. It's still in its original location. A cannonball fired into the house by the British in April of 1813 remains lodged in the wall of this very haunted house. At least 800 souls have been lost at sea during the past few centuries off the coast near Lewes. Numerous apparitions and ghostly encounters have been recorded near the ferry terminal, where commuting boats from Cape May, New Jersey, arrive daily and are accompanied and welcomed by ghosts. Number 8 on our list is Santa Fe, New Mexico. A multiplicity of cultures has shaped this western city, which was founded in 1610 and claims to be the oldest state capital in the USA. Its name translates Holy Faith, and it's a renaming of a Native American settlement which was called the White Shell Water Place in the native tongues. As many as 20 different ghosts sharing a 3-hour period have been recorded by paranormal investigators studying the phenomena in this picturesque colonial city. Located on the Santa Fe Trail, a busy route for travelers during the opening up of the Old West, tales of a zombie outbreak in the 1880s, visits from outlaws, including Billy the Kid, and even a visit from a St. Joseph figure are all a part of the haunt history of Santa Fe. St. Joseph came in 1878. A beautiful chapel was built in France and transported to Santa Fe and assembled by the Catholic Church there. But there was a problem. There was no way for the nuns to access the choir loft. They forgot to put in a staircase. And 22 feet above the floor, the nuns shook their heads. They didn't want to climb a ladder all the way up. And legend tells that the sisters began to pray. And a mysterious stranger came. This brings tears to my eyes because I was there and felt him. And he was a craftsman. He constructed the mysterious spiral staircase that's there today, and it balances on air. Engineers have looked at it. They can't figure out how it works. It was made from a type of wood that's extinct now and is nowhere in the area. Isn't that interesting? If you didn't believe in paranormal phenomena before, you will now. And the carpenter disappeared and didn't charge anyone. Now that's St. Joseph. What would he need money for? And over the years, different people have been unable to explain. It was even featured on the Unsolved Mystery Show, The Chapel of Loretta. I'm a Cancer. Sometimes I just can't help it, especially dealing with ghosts and how real they really are. Savannah, Georgia is our number 7 pick, and founded in 1733 as a debtor's prison by the British. Savannah is the oldest city in Georgia. This theme of claiming to be the oldest is really a big part of paranormal phenomena. Its coastal location makes it a strategic location for military activity, and during the Revolutionary War, there were many, many graves and debris. 22 park-like squares were built on top of the debris, so the whole city is a giant graveyard. And it's connected by cobblestone streets, surrounded by beautiful buildings. And Savannah offers multiple antique and authentic ghost tours, including a haunted pub crawl. I guess you sleep in the pub doing that. Tour guides claim that the entire city is a variety of creepy events. I did an overnight ghost stay in the Sorrel Weed House, built in 1837, and that's a very active paranormal hub for anyone who wants to work with cameras, some of the more technical ghost hunting equipment that we see on television. The house here is a haunted bed and breakfast. This is the Forsyth Park house where I stayed when I was in Savannah, kind of a miniature version. And I felt an elderly housekeeper going up and down the hallways there, checking out just the housekeeping, which is meticulous, by the way, in the Forsyth Park house. Number 6 on our ghost tour around the United States is Salem, Massachusetts. Dubbed the Witch City for its connection to the infamous witch trials, Salem has an extensive documented history of spectral happenings and ghostly sightings. One of the many available tours introduces 13 different ghosts. Hot spots include the House of the Seven Gables, the subject of Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel, Gallows Hill, where the condemned witches met their end, and the Witch House, which was both the home and courthouse of the infamous Judge Corwin, who presided over most of the witch trials, are stops there. The Judge Corwin house is the only structure still standing which was linked to the 17th century witch scare. The House of the Seven Gables was built just after that. It's now a museum, and the ghostly activities there are documented daily. Number 5 on our haunted stay around the United States is St. Augustine, Florida. The oldest city in the continental United States, St. Augustine was celebrated when the first Mass was there at 1565 as a town, and it prides itself on the sheer volume of historic sites, dating back to the time of the discovery of Florida's Fountain of Youth by Ponce de Leon in 1513, and for its non-theatrical ghost tours. A lot of times ghost tours will have guides that have costumes and carry lights, and that's all very well. But St. Augustine has quite a scientific side to its ghost tours. Ghostly voices, orbs captured in tours, spectral visitors on film, all are abundant. The Castillo de San Marcos, a massive fort built by the Spanish about 1672, has a tiny room where the spirit of a wayward wife was walled up alive by an angry husband, and it can still be encountered that she was there. There was a story that she went home, left her family, and also a story that a young a young recruit whom she was carrying on with suddenly went AWOL, but that wasn't true because the two skeletons were actually found walled up together, and her husband was the commander of the camp, so no one wanted to say anything about it. While he was there, it was quite a long time before this little room was opened up, and today it's possible you can lean down if you're not too tall and get inside, and it has a very sinister feeling. At the old city gate in St. Augustine, there's a ghost named Elizabeth who perished from yellow fever. And there's across from the Castillo, there's a pedestrian street in St. Augustine with the old gates. That was before anyone had to drive cars anywhere. And Elizabeth is there to greet anyone. She signals to visitors whether it's safe to enter or not. The lighthouse in St. Augustine provides a refuge for many different lightkeepers and their family who call it home still. Lighthouses are very haunted anyway. They're liminal places between this world and the next, and lighthouse ghosts are a whole separate tour, actually. The Gonzales Avarales house, built in the 1700s, is the oldest surviving colonial home, and it houses its original tenants. Also, the Spanish military hospital in St. Augustine is very active for ghost hunters to visit. Hospitals are haunted anyway, if you think about it. They're visitors waiting to see whether a loved one is going to join them or what's going on there. Our next step is going to be Chicago, Illinois. Number 4, my hometown, is number 4 on the tour. Chicago's dynamic energy was summed up by Mark Twain in 1883 when he wrote, "It is hopeless for the occasional visitor to keep up with Chicago. She outgrows prophecies faster than anyone can make them." Interesting, he personified Chicago as a woman. I kind of like that idea. The city's name is adopted from Chicagawa, a Potomac Indian name meaning wild onion and garlic. Interesting. The haunt history probably began when the Native American inhabitants were forcibly removed by European settlers in the early 1830s. The famous large fire, started by Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's cow, the saying goes, gangster hangouts, mob shootings, a variety of other wild, frightening situations contribute to Chicago's extensive haunt history. Highly regarded paranormal investigators authenticate Chicago's hauntings, including the ghost active at Oprah Winfrey's studio. Another famous ghost is Resurrection Mary. She's a hitchhiking ghost whom many encounter. She wants a ride back to the cemetery. She's a beautiful young woman, and many people can't resist stopping to give her a ride late at night, and then she'll suddenly disappear if the car goes near one of the cemeteries, especially the Resurrection Cemetery. Number 3, the haunt history of New Orleans, Louisiana. This has to be near the top of our list. A paranormal gumbo of ghostly activity is here. It offers a genuine welcome wagon to the droves of ghost hunters who visit New Orleans. Located near where the Mississippi River empties into the Gulf of Mexico, the city is surrounded by murky swamps and water, all of which offer an energy conduit to the paranormal. Every half century or so since its founding, there's been a major tragedy around New Orleans. Of course, we have the Katrina hurricane recently, but there was also a yellow fever epidemic in 1853, which left almost 8,000 dead, their bodies stacked in the street. Areas where There are especially active hauntings include the old slave market, a place of incredible cruelty and hangings, which ushered in the voodoo tradition, which welcomes paranormal activities. High consumption of alcohol, that will draw in spiritual activity. And the oldest bar, Lafayette's, in the United States, is located there. There's the warm, steamy climate, creates a daydream state of mind. This generates the alpha brainwaves, which help us all to attune to the spirit world. The famous French Quarter is especially haunted, and Arnaud's restaurant is haunted by the owner's original daughter, Germaine, who managed the restaurant after Count Arnaud started it, and she remains to stay around her collection of Mardi Gras memorabilia and to keep an eye on the kitchen. The Bourbon Orleans Hotel is another very haunted area, and that's a top site. It's the ghost of haunted children are there because at one time it was an orphanage. And then, of course, there's the grave of Marie Laveau, which you have to visit and leave a chalk mark on in order to court the voodoo queen's favor. I was in New Orleans with an astrology conference some years back, and of course we all had to, in between conference activities, tour the haunted sites. And I had another astrologer collapse, and she was possessed by Marie Laveau, and we all had to do a healing before we left the cemetery because my friend who had collapsed didn't want to leave a chalk mark for Marie. So if you hang out around her tomb, don't tempt fate. It isn't worth it. Number 2 on our haunted site, New York City, New York. There's more of everything here than there is anywhere else, a native New Yorker said to me once, and that often seems to be true when encountering ghosts around the Big Apple. Every single street in New York is steeped in activities and steeped in colorful legends and history, people from all around the planet. Almost from the very beginning, long before ghost hunting became chic, encounters with the spirit world were frequently reported in New York. All the way from Washington Heights to Staten Island, the Brooklyn Bridge is connected to many paranormal episodes. Edgar Allan Poe spent much of his life in Greenwich Village, and he wrote The Raven. One of the places where Poe's apparition appears is Poe Cottage, which is now a museum in New York. Well, what do you think our number 1 haunt is? It's not the Alamo. Can anyone guess? I hope you'll agree with me, but remember, this is a subjective tour, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of argument here, but it's got to be Washington, D.C. for me. Every time I go there, I'm haunted. The last time the hotel I was staying in, the water in the upstairs rooms burst, and I was flooded out and had to flee at 4 in the morning. They did refund half of my night's stay, though. Often called the most haunted capital city in the entire world, Washington, D.C. is a sovereign city. It joins the Vatican with being a sovereign city, very, very rare status, and it's a regular paranormal hub of activity. From Capitol Hill, with its underground vaults guarding untold secrets, to the White House, where Abraham Lincoln's ghost constantly startles guests. The Abraham Lincoln bedroom terrified a visiting queen from Europe. I want to say from the Netherlands. The Netherlands or Sweden, but she was visiting and she asked to move in the middle of the night because Abraham Lincoln kept knocking on her door. And the same is true of other activities around the White House. Arlington National Cemetery, the National Mall, and Georgetown all have very active spirits. The ghost of Dolly Madison appears at several different locations. The title First Lady was coined for Dolly, and that's been used at the White House ever since. She likes to hang out in the rose garden, which she had planted, the first rose garden originally, and she also likes to return to visit the Octagon House, where she and her husband, President James Madison, lived after the British burned the White House in 1812. Ghost tours in Washington, D.C. are carefully authenticated, and they're highlighted with a lot of good historic anecdotes. So even if you're not keen on ghosts, it's well worth it to take the tour just for the historic interest. Well, this concludes our tour around haunted America. Happy ghost haunting.